My heart rate is raising.
We're live. We are live. We are live. We are live. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi, everyone.
So interesting.
My name is Karen Young, and my co-host is here, Michelle Fujii. We welcome to the second Women in Taiko official webinar called Emergence. These webinars came out of a project called Women in Taiko, which has been a project that has existed in the Taiko community now for a long, long time. There have been conversations about women in Taiko. And in 2017, with Tiffany Tamaribuchi, myself, Sasha Molina, and Sarah Ayako, we launched the first ever Summer Taiko Intensive on women in Taiko to really dive deep into these topics, acknowledging that the majority of the community is largely women who play, yet a lot of the leadership and a lot of the instruction and a lot of folks that we see visible as professionals are men. And we wanted to create opportunities to really raise the visibility of women. So since that time, there's been a number of amazing things that have happened. We had a gathering in 2017, again in 2019. We've launched the womenintaiko.org website, which really was a placeholder and a vehicle for a lot of other projects, including a Women in Taiko workshop leaders list, a mentorship program, and a Women You Should Know section. And so this webinar is directly in line with what we're trying to do, which is really share the stories and experiences of women in order to really highlight those stories that we don't always hear. So welcome, everyone.
Yay.
This webinar also is part of a series that's connected with one program, specifically in Women in Taiko, which is a 7-month fellowship program. And we launched a pilot this year. Karen and I are the mentors, facilitators. And one of the things that we spoke of when we were thinking both of our own personal leadership was what were ways in which we built our leadership? What were some things that were important? And one of the things that was so important in both of our experiences was actually hearing stories of other women from other women leaders. And it had the spectrum of within Taiko, hearing women Taiko leaders, but also just other women leaders and their voices and stories. And we realized when we were developing this program to be able to have the opportunity to hear from different people going into leadership within our Taiko community, that was going to be a big part. And we decided that instead of just doing that as a conversation with our fellows, that we wanted to provide that as an opportunity for anyone to be able to hear too. That's a webinar. So thank you all for being here to hear these wonderful stories from our 3 panelists. But I also just want to call out that we had 4 courageous, bold, amazing fellows. Eileen Ho from the Great Lakes Taiko Center, Jessie Gibbs from Narukami Taiko and Kodama in Tawa, Wellington, New Zealand. Eileen from, I should say, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Lisa Miyako Taiko and Mark H. Taiko School in Maryland. And Natalie Hudson from Kaminari Taiko of Houston, Houston, Texas. So these 4 women have been actually journeying for the past 6 months. We're gonna end our 7-month program in December, which you'll have an opportunity to hear their journey. But the questions that actually were designed to be asking our panelists today were actually created by our 4 fellows. And it was sort of, what are their inquiries and curiosities about leadership and what would they want to hear? So as Karen and I facilitate this is actually sourced from the 4 amazing women that we've been working with. So that is a little bit of a background of why this webinar sort of came to be. And today's webinar, Emergence, was to sort of highlight the opportunity of women Taiko leaders that are emerging and discovering and building and dynamically involved. And so we have three amazing folks with us. I'm just going to do a brief introduction, starting with Tomomi Hongo. Yay! So, Tomomi was 8 when, yes, you were 8. You were 8 when she began playing Taiko at Marino Language School. Her father, Etsuo Hongo, established several groups and was Tomomi's first teacher. She joined Venice Koshin Taiko in the early 2000s. In 2007, she joined TAIKOPROJECT as a performing member, as well as became an instructor. In 2013, she traveled to Japan to study under Ishizuka and Taro Kobayashi, where she was able to study the fundamentals of Taiko. So yay, thank you, Tomomi.
Thank you for having me.
Next is Manman Mui. Yay!
Yay.
Manman is a creative artist and acclaimed music educator. Manman teaches at Los Angeles Taiko Institute, LATI, and works around the globe. She founded a parent-child Taiko program, Taiko Together, and offers professional development for music teachers and Taiko practitioners titled Taiko FUNdamentals. So thank you, Manman. Yay!
Yay.
Lastly is Vicky Zhang. Hello. Vicky Zhang encountered Taiko when she joined Stanford Taiko. She plays with Unit Sozo. Thank you. And that's right. Working intensively on several productions. She helped start Taiko Soba at the Palo Alto Buddhist Temple and plays with Jun Daiko at the Mountain View Buddhist Temple. Vicky is a mechanical engineer in the Bay Area, California. So thank you, Vicky.
Yay.
Why don't we talk a little bit about ourselves, Karen? Who are you? We are the hosts.
Yes, we are the hosts. My name is Karen Young. For those of you who I don't know, hello. I live in Boston, Massachusetts. I started playing Taiko with Odaiko New England, the first Taiko group in the Boston area, just turning 25 this year. And I spun off in 2010 to start the Genki Spark. That's been about 9 years now, which is a Pan-Asian multi-generational Asian women's group. And then this last couple of years, I've been really interested in diving deeply into Taiko as a vehicle for social change and for community organizing. And so I have a lot of projects around how Taiko can be used as a way to really amplify voice or highlight and address issues in the community. So last year I was an artist for the city of Boston, a Boston artist in residence, and I have a project called Older and Bolder, which is working with elders in the city. Yeah.
And I will be co-hosting with Karen. My name is Michelle Fujii. I am based in Portland, Oregon, and I co-direct a company called Unit Sozo. A lot of the kinds of work that we're doing at Unit Sozo is really thinking about identity, otherness, and belonging in a lot of our artistic work. I've been in this art form for over 25 years-ish, and in lots of different groups, starting with San Jose Taiko, and did some work in Los Angeles, on Ensemble, TAIKOPROJECT, also worked here with Portland Taiko, went to Japan, studied with Wadabiza, so did a long journey in my Taiko life. But all of that really comes together with a lot of the work that I've been doing, especially centered around storytelling, Taiko, theater, dance, really thinking about the movement and how it can really form or shape the sound of Taiko. So lots of different sorts of things. Right now working on a project called Constant State of Otherness that's going to be touring throughout the United States next year. So it'll be really cool to see some people as we go throughout the United States. So that's a little bit about us. Today we are going to have a whole bunch of questions, as mentioned, framed by our 4 fellows. And we also want to have some activity and opportunities in which we might be able to not only get some questions from any one of you on the webinar, but also maybe reflections and thoughts. So one of the ways that we always start out in our fellow sort of meetings, because we do meet online, is we ask each other, where are you right now? Because sometimes, you know, we're jet setters. So where are you? And sort of what is the time that you are in? So what sort of like the time zone? But I think we're going to expand upon that because we would like to get to know just a little bit. So here it is. This is all of the hope that you can put into the chat. And actually, maybe Karen, could you first give that mechanism just to tell people when I talk about the chat, where to put that?
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to mention. One is there are 35 people that signed up for this, which is amazing, fantastic.
Thank you.
And we were trying to figure out how this was not just a like watch us talk. we were trying to really figure out how we could have more voice. So there's at the bottom of your screen, there's something called a chat bubble, and you want to actually open that. The folks that are watching this via YouTube afterwards, you will not get to see the chat, but Michelle and I will be trying to actually share as much as possible that the panelists are going to be sharing. So at one point, we're going to ask you to answer these questions. You'll see there's a drop-down menu when you open the chat. One says all panelists, the other one say all panelists and attendees. When we ask you to respond, we're asking you to use the all panelists and attendees so that everybody can see how you're responding. And so there'll be various times throughout the webinar. Oh, you guys are very funny. I'm watching the chat. That will ask you questions too, and we can kind of have a conversation here and sort of respond back and forth. The other thing that I think is really important for us to note is that Women in Taiko work really centers on women, but we do absolutely recognize that there is a spectrum, and not to leave, all of our activities have been open and welcome to everyone. We acknowledge our non-binary friends as well as gender non-conforming friends and everybody else who sort of identifies not either with women or men. And so I just want to be really clear that we're very welcome to all of those experiences, and we in no way want to flatten or leave that out, even though we do center this particular conversation around women. So with that, I think we've explained the how to use the chat, and I actually think we should go back to the question, because I think we want to keep it to your name, where you are, what time it is, and what your weather is like, because I think with 35 people on the call, we want to actually see, because it's really fun to do a little shout out. So if Michelle, that's okay if I can amend your proposal.
Yes, let's do that. So you said 3 things then. So where are you right now?
Where are you right now? And please include your country. So get ready to type these in. What time is it? And what's your weather like?
Weather.
Yes.
Great.
So I'll just model. I'll just say, I'm Karen. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts in the United States. It is now 8:15 p.m. I've had dinner. And it's 44 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 6 degrees Celsius.
Great. Yay, we have some people already doing this. We have Lisa, Washington, D.C., 8:15. It's warm at 51 degrees Fahrenheit.
Carla's in Virginia in the United States. It's 8:15. Chile for Virginia, same as Lisa.
Cool. Izumi from Toronto, Canada, 8:15 as well. It's 3 degrees Celsius or 30 Fahrenheit. That sounds a little chilly.
Yeah, they come pretty fast. Liz in Winnipeg, Canada, 7:15. Awesome here, plus 2 degrees. Ian, California Bay Area, 5:15 p.m., 53 degrees fall Fahrenheit.
Great. Jesse, Wellington, New Zealand, 2:15 p.m. on Wednesday the 20th, sunny. All right.
Gail coming in from Colorado. These are coming in fast, 6:15, 40 degrees, getting colder. Evelyn Wu, LA. Oh my gosh, 94 degrees yesterday. What? 78 today, 5:15.
Nice. Marty, Calgary, Canada, 6:15, -1 degree Celsius.
Snowing! Snowing, no. Deb Wong. Hi, Deb. Riverside, California. Raining, 5:15 p.m., 72 degrees.
Okay.
Long Island, 8:15 p.m., 49 Fahrenheit. Hello.
Margaret, Winnipeg, 7:15. Weather's mild for November. 1 degree, 34 degrees. That's
34 degrees,
okay,
my
good.
weather app.
Sarah, currently in New York, 8:16. Misty outside, 40 degrees Fahrenheit.
Eileen Ho, Michigan, inside because webinar, 37 degrees Fahrenheit outside.
Nice. Jillian, Calgary, Canada, 6:15. Snowing. Gotta brag.
Snowing.
Wow.
8 inches.
Wow.
8 inches. 20 centimeters of snow already. Oh my gosh. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Our panelists
Wow.
did that, but you should be doing it too. I'm
Oh, yeah.
also going.
Panelists, please just go ahead and say it because
in
yes.
Houston, 7:18, 69 degrees. Modeling myself, Michelle, Portland. Oops, I didn't put, oh, I did. Michelle, Portland, 55 degrees here. Anyone else? We'd love to do a call out of anyone. Manman, Torrance, 17 degrees Celsius. Thank you.
Excellent. Vicky, our panelist, Bay Area, California, 5:18, 50 something. Excellent. Well done.
Oh, yeah, great. Time. And Tomomi, rounding it out, Santa Monica, 64 degrees Fahrenheit. Nice job. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you all for being here. Oh, Jen. Hello, Jen. Las Vegas, 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Cool. All right. Well, now that we heard from all the places and spaces that we are all from, why don't we get started with some questions for our panelists. Yeah, that's me. So the first question, it would be really great to ask all of you is, what attracted you to Taiko? What are you aiming to achieve in your Taiko journey? Where you want to go?
Is there a certain order?
How about I ask Manman and then Tomomi, then Vicky?
Okay. That's a big question. Why I start? I started Taiko in Hong Kong. I guess Taiko, growing up, I had a lot of opportunity playing lots of different instruments, like classical, like piano, or folk music with Chinese orchestra. And I also danced a lot too growing up. But because of like the background competition and examination nature of playing music, I never really get to enjoy music. And I was introduced to Taiko about 10 years ago in Hong Kong. And that's the very first time that I feel like, wow, I can dance, I can play music, and I can actually enjoy connecting with people through music and dance and moving and all that at the same time. So that was what really, like, I got really hooked and decided, okay, I'm gonna go all in and Taiko be my whole life. So I moved to the US and studied with Kenny and Shizuko Endo in Hawaii in 2012. And then I moved to LA about 2 years ago. So Taiko has become a big part of my life because I love how I can, like, it empowers me. It like completes, I can be my full self. And also it gives it has given me a tools to connect with everyone. So that's basically sums up what I'm doing with Taiko, like on a personal level, on a professional level. And yeah, so that will be the short answer to a very big question.
Cool. So that's when, when you asked me that, what attracted me to Taiko, I don't know, because growing up, my dad, he would just take me to his practices, me and my sister. But then he started Marino Rainbow Taiko at my elementary school. And I remember my first year I just watched. I wasn't really into it. It was more like I have to wait for him to teach class. So I was basically just eating snacks and like waiting for him to finish classes. But it wasn't until like in third grade, I was like, oh, I guess I'll try it out, So it wasn't like my parents ever forced me to do it. It was more just like, oh, my friends are playing, so I might as well just kind of give it a try. So I started there, and then like once I was in middle school, I stopped for 2 years because it was one of those like, I'm too cool for Taiko, like the very like preteen phase. And then it wasn't until 8th grade where I picked it up again, and that's when my dad told me, he was like, if you're going to do this, like you have to commit, you can't quit. So I was like, okay. So from then on, I didn't stop. So I went from 8th grade to high school. I was at Koshin Taiko. And then after I graduated high school, I joined Taiko Project. And then I joined UCI Jodaiko for 2 years, and Proda here and there. And then I worked with Manman, and I also took with Taiko Together. And then also took over the Marino Taiko program once my dad moved to South America. So I guess for me, it was more just like, Taiko is a big part of my identity. So if I were to just stop now, like I wouldn't know what to do with my spare time. And I feel like I have a small family here in LA, and I feel like networking and just all the friends I have are just like, even my friends at work are like, you have a lot of friends, but they're all like Taiko friends. I'm like, yeah, they're kind of like my big second family. So for me, it just kind of provides like a sense of community. And yeah, where do I want to go? I don't know. Right now, it's kind of like I've been doing it for so long. Why stop? So I'm just kind of like chugging forward. And, recently my dad did pass away. So it was a big part of me where I'm like, oh, I have to continue his legacy. So I'm just kind of like working that part out, because now I'm realizing, oh, wow, he did a lot back in the day. So now I'm trying to like unravel all of those pieces that he started before I was born, and now how can I make it, I guess, my own. So I'm in this weird like transition. So that's a short answer to a similar to Manman.
Mm-hmm. Great. So the first time I ever saw Taiko was in college, my freshman year. And I mean, honestly, the reason that I first saw it and wanted to do it is because it looked cool and it looked fun. Like, and I think similar to Manman, I also had background in in piano, and in orchestra, but like piano, it's a more individual art form, and also swam, which is also very individual sport. So like that's where Taiko also drew me in, because you're in an ensemble, and to work that closely with people that's something I hadn't really been able to do in my life. So that excited me a lot. And I think right now, like in this like very confused place with where I am in my Taiko journey, basically. Like after college, I graduated in 2015. And I mean, as I mentioned, I have a full-time job, so it's been kind of, what I was trying to do is see like, where can I fit Taiko into also like
Life.
this other life, right? Yeah. And yeah, I didn't take the leap of going all in. And yeah, it's been interesting to see where it's like this balance of how far can I go with Taiko, but also it's been the last 3 years, especially with Michelle and Tori, I've learned a lot about how deep you can really go as like with Taiko, and with finding voice, and there's so much to committing to that, and to committing to being an artist. Like that was another jump for me that really I just made this year, was like I wasn't thinking of taiko as like in terms of being an artist necessarily. You know, there's kind of I think there is a general disconnect at first for a lot of people when you first come into taiko. And I mean, not there just comes, for me, there was like that point of realizing that there's a lot of deep searching within myself and also in my life and what I'm doing. And I think my words are all like mixed up because my life is also mixed up right now, and I don't know, like I feel like even though I've been playing taiko for 8 years, it's like now I'm really starting on a really much more meaningful journey now. So that's where I'm at, which also means I don't know where I'm going, so not yet.
Well, I want to, from all of you, I guess I'm going to mix up sort of two opposite sort of perspectives that you can decide to go towards one, or you could address both. But where you all are at right now, what do you find rewarding about the choice that you have made to have taiko continue to be a part of your life? But also talk about some of the doubts as well. So as you're navigating through this period of time in your journey, in your current journey, do you have doubts? And how are you dealing with it? So the rewards and the doubts, you can decide to prioritize talking about one side or the other, or both equally. But maybe we could mix it up, and maybe Vicky, you could start, and then we'll go Manman Tomomi.
Okay. Well, I think you can already tell I have a lot of doubts. For me, it's again the balance. Like, is it possible to really get somewhere deep enough and find, like, be always entrenched in that place where you are introspective, but also like constantly thinking deeply, like especially with like working in Silicon Valley, right? Like a lot of my peers and the people I spend a lot of time with at work are not necessarily thinking in that on that plane. It's like very different place to be mentally. So yeah, I guess that question's been creeping up on me, is like, is it possible to keep doing both things? And the question, again, the question for me is, how far do I want to go? Or even how far can I go? But like, I've seen how taiko can move people in so many different ways, like through teaching, through community, through the artistry itself. There are so many layers to it, and so much richness, and it just builds, there's a great strength and power in taiko. And I guess that's what is pulling me or pushing me forward right now.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, so that's very deep, and and actually this question could go so many ways. The first thing that comes to mind is actually when I make the decisions of leaving Hawaii and come to LA, which actually, Vicky, you mentioned earlier, like there was a moment of realization of I'm gonna actually commit and say that I am an artist, because I realized that I have such a big voice that I've been kind of hiding and suppressing and not embracing and not allowing myself to just like, here's my stories, like here's what I have to say. And making that transition was quite scary. But also rewarding at the same time. So of course, you have tons of doubts and reward, like all keeps going like back and forth. And I would say like it's been 2 years now that I work. Well, I've been only doing Taiko since I left and moved to US, which like was in 2012. But really fully declare I am a Taiko artist, like an independent Taiko artist, and starting to put my name out there. It's only been maybe three or 4 years. It's pretty scary going down that path, but this past 2 years, I finally realized that like what is my core values and purpose. Like why did I do this? Why? I remember I smile a lot. I feel really happy every time I play Taiko. And when I moved to Hawaii instead of Kenichizuko, I like that was amazing because I had lots of connection with the history and like have more studies of the arts and have deeper understandings of so many things. And then I kind of come full circle when I remember, oh, the reason why I started Taiko was because I feel really like I can bring my full self to the table, and how I can connect with everybody, and how I have the tools as a music educator to offer that to everyone around me too. And that's when I decided that I'm gonna like make the change and commit to all of that. And of course, going down that path, like even though like Taiko is a really fairly new art form as a performing arts, but there are also a lot of role model out there. But then when you look at the role models, you start to compare, okay, so how am I going to do this? But then here comes the doubts, because there's only so much you can compare yourself with the other people, and then realizing what exactly is you're going to do for yourself. And this past 2 years, when I realized, oh, like to look at what I'm good at, and saying that even though that might be different from all the 10 other role models that you see, I need to like hold on to that and like make space for me to make that like being seen and keep growing that. So I guess that's where I'm at now. I feel like I have a more grasp of, okay, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm doing with Taiko as an artist and educator. But then there also comes out of doubts too. I'm 34. And so I gave up a lot of, like, I passed on some like full-time opportunity to have a sustainable, like more stable income type of life. But because I believe in, like, here's my purpose of Taiko, I don't want to give up on that. I know that I need to put my full self into doing that. So like it's never end. But also, like Tomomi said earlier, the community that you get from being part of this Taiko community is so rewarding and supportive sometimes. Like, no matter how, like, there are so many moments that you feel like, oh, why am I doing this? And then you look outside and see where we are right here. Like, you get so much support, and you always can find a way to figure that out. And it's so, so powerful.
So Vicky, it's a lot. I feel like mine is kind of all over the place, but they kind of like intertwine. I don't know. So like the best way, like when you said balance, I feel like, yes, that's one of my doubts and one of my challenges, because I also work full time and I work with little children. They're like, you know, I work with like four-year-olds right before they go to kindergarten. So I feel like I'm constantly have like a teacher hat on, and then when I'm playing Taiko. I don't really play anymore. I do more of the teaching, and then I kind of play with them. But it's always that like teacher hat. So it's been like about 3 years where I kind of like took a step back from performing and really focused on like the youth groups that I teach. So I feel like my whole mindset has been like completely shifted from like, you know, I'm still dealing with understanding like, oh, Taiko artist versus like, I kind of just see myself as like a Taiko player. That's how I like grew up, like identifying myself like, oh, you're a Taiko player, you play with this group because you play Taiko with this group. So definitely that sense of balance, because I did get burnt out from Taiko, because it got to a point where I was playing Taiko every day except Saturday. I was doing Taiko and I was doing Taiko project, and I was also teaching like 2 groups at the same time. So I told myself, okay, like you need to like make time for yourself, and it's okay to like take a step back. So that sense of balance is like my number 1 priority. A recent doubt, but I think also rewarding, and hopefully is rewarding. Since, you know, I've been looking at old like concert videos from like 91 that my dad has kept. I have to transfer them from VHS to DVD, then I have to like transfer the DVD to an MP4. It's a whole process, but it's been a long process. But I'm thinking, wow, like, you know, not a lot of people know my dad. And I think because, you know, from 2007 on, he moved to South America. So he kind of like, I don't want to say shunned himself from the Taiko community, but he wasn't as, you know, recognized, I guess. So I guess my goal is to really put his name, and my mom too, but they both played, but, you know, continuing his legacy. But, you know, we had very different mindsets when it came to Taiko, and I'm sure people know him, like they can understand the challenges of working with him, but he's very much, you know, like, this is my piece, like you need permission and all this stuff. And I feel like that limits growth and that limits opportunity. So like I'm in this like limbo right now where I'm like, I might make one of his songs copyleft, but that's like totally going against like, so am I like disrespecting him or am I helping him, you know? So my gut is saying like just do it, because that way there is that continual like continuing his legacy and like honoring what he has done for the Taiko community. But the daughter side of me is like, you know, he's gonna be like yelling at you and like getting mad at you. But the part of me is like, I don't care. So not that I don't care, but I feel like the bigger picture is like, you know, I think Taiko is something used to connect people. So why not use his songs, some of his repertoire, to connect people? So that's where the reward, I feel like that's kind of rewarding, but it's also like, is that okay, you know, consciously? But, you know, another side that I find really rewarding is, you know, with my students, especially the older ones, I try to make it as a collaborative. Obviously, like I'm the instructor, but anytime you have a performance or whatever, I'm like, okay, you guys are in charge of changing like this part of the song, like it's you guys. So I appreciate their input, because that way they take ownership of what they're doing, and they're more like, I don't know, hopefully more prideful or more proud about showcasing what they have put together. So that's like the most rewarding thing, where I can take a step back and they can do all of that independently. So again, I'm kind of like all over the place, but yeah, this balance and like, can I really keep up with what my dad has done so far, and it is okay to like go against his own philosophy, because he's very katai, like very hard-headed at times. He was very hard-headed, but I kind of want to change that, but is that okay? I don't know. So that's where I'm at right now.
Great. I'm really appreciating hearing all your stories. It does feel like we're in a living room somewhat, and getting to know a little bit more about your lives. This particular webinar is called Emergence, and you know, Michelle and I thought about you because you all are in different phases of kind of emerging, and even if you've played for, you know, decades at this point, there's always, as you've talked about, there's things to uncover and discover, and you're all at various sort of levels of all in, kind of in, should I still be in? And it's a journey, you know, this is all a process. And so I want to explore a little bit more about sort of the all in and related to like life balance. And you've already touched upon it some. But I think a lot of us in the community, when we start playing Taiko, it's so exciting. You know, I remember being at the first North American Taiko conference in 1997. Odaiko New England was just 2 years old. We were still kind of playing on tires, and sometimes we were lucky if we got a drum that we borrowed from someplace. And so to go to the first NATC was like, you know, stayed up all night long talking to everybody. So excited to make connections. And, you know, I was pretty much all in, but with another career and a life. And I found it many times difficult to date, you know, have romantic relationships, you know, figure out how to have friends outside the Taiko community. And when I started Genki Spark in 2010, I definitely had no time for any of that. You know, I think I literally didn't sleep for 2 years straight, I think. So I want to sort of talk a little bit about that. And sort of where are you now and where were you? But I also at this point want to turn to our audience for a minute. And I just want to ask a question. It's kind of a fun question. Like, how many of you, and make sure when you go to the chat, you click the drop down button that says send to all panelists and attendees. Some of you are responding and it's just coming to the panelists. We really want to have everybody see the answers to these. But how many of you are come from like a Taiko family? And I know some of you do, meaning like your whole family is involved somehow, your kids, your siblings, you've roped in your spouse or your partner. Let's just kind of see if there's anybody out there. I'm just curious. And I guess I'll add to that family, like how many of you are partnered or dating somebody who is in the life, so to speak, in the Taiko community? Like you really are sort of, yep, my husband, I met in Taiko. That's what Natalie says. Great, thanks for these responses. Carla says, I think I might be the first person from Newfoundland to play Taiko, and my mom calls it Taiko. That might be Newfoundland. Okay. Tomomi, you talked about coming from a family growing up. Manman, you want to say a little bit about your partner?
Yeah, yeah, I met Scott for Taiko.
Yeah. Close friends, our best friends. My brother and my cousins play. Oh, also I'm dating Vicky. Vicky's being Vicky. Hello, Vicky. Right here. Dulce says, my husband, me, and 2 boys, age 14 and 11 years old, play together. Aww. Jesse from New Zealand says, my husband plays Taiko with me. He started because when I started my group, I couldn't drive, so he drove me and the drums to practice and thought he might as well play too. Derek, oh yeah, hello. My wife and I both play. Eileen says playing in love and with spouse and kids. Kids tried and left Taiko to parents. Ha ha ha. So, you know, it's common, right, that we have our whole families in it, and it's not a surprise. So could you talk a little bit about, thank you everyone who responded, just about how you think about balance. And is there, you know, I know sometimes on our last call with PJ actually talked in the webinar about how people would say, don't you have a life outside Taiko? And she would sometimes get upset because it's like, this is my life, my community. And she didn't see anything wrong with that. In fact, she thought that was an amazing thing to have such a community. So could you each talk about that? And Vicky, let's go, Vicky, Manman, and Tomomi. Like, yeah, how do you think about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess most of my friends are Taiko people at this point. I've only been to 3 weddings in my life, and it was all in the last 3 years, and they were all Taiko people, which is fun. Yeah, I think, I mean, I feel like it's, yeah, something that naturally happens. Is, you know, you all spend time doing things together and you connect, and yeah, you create, it's a, yeah, it's like a deeper relationship because you do so many things together. But I do have, I mean, I have other friends too, I guess.
Well, let me, if I could just pause for a second, like, let me just sort of explore things a little bit further. Like, if you wouldn't mind,
yeah.
if you would say your age and a little bit about, like, you know, a lot of us at the Women in Taiko retreats talk a little bit about sort of family too, and like how you think about that. And Taiko can be all consuming, and like, you know, have you thought about, yeah, I mean, there's career, there's family, you know, given that Taiko is so all consuming, like, how do you think about other things?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, I guess I don't, yeah, for me, it actually doesn't feel like Taiko is like all consuming because I do have another job, and my parents and my sister don't play Taiko either. So yeah, I guess for me, yeah, it still feels kind of balanced. Or like when I'm thinking about balance, I'm like, yeah, it's, yeah, like when that's what it is. Like when I think about balance, it's not just the activities themselves, but also the people that I would end up spending more time with in figuring out the balance. And there's also, I mean, I'm also in a place of thinking about who it really, yeah, for me, it's like, who do I want to spend time with, and who, where do I want to deepen relationships, or find people that can help me grow, or that I can grow with together. And yeah, sorry, my age, I am 26. So I guess I could be thinking about certain big decisions, but you know, it's but it also still feels pretty far away. So I guess where I am right now is I'm still pretty free.
Got it. Great.
Yeah.
Wow. Manman.
My name is Manman. I'm 34. Well, I am 34. So yes, yeah, there are a lot of things, definitely. Well, speaking of balance, so I did, you know, leave Hong Kong for Taiko. So that means I and working like freelance or just doing Taiko, like I don't make a lot of money. So meaning that I actually missed most of my cousin's wedding in Hong Kong. And yeah, and I've been going back to Hong Kong. But most of my family, all my family are still in Hong Kong. And well, luckily my parents like to travel, so they will meet me somewhere. But every time when I go back to Hong Kong, I have to like find work. So even if I spend a month in Hong Kong, it will be packed with work. So there's a part of me feel like, well, I don't like it. I feel like I'm missing out, no matter how much I try. So like the one that I can be most connected with are like just my parents, and the rest of my other family, which I grew up with and spend a lot of time with. Like I don't, like I'm missing out on my like babies and all that. Yeah, so that's part of me feel like, but that's okay. Like I know why I'm here. And I like, if you think about everyday balance, I'm worse at that. I'm really bad at that. Because, you know, working just doing Taiko, meaning I'm my own, like I'm not just a performer and teacher, I'm also my own manager, agent, accountant, and web designer and everything. So every time when I'm home, I feel like, oh, I should be working on something. And then, you know, the day went by. And yeah, and so and I've been traveling a lot too for work, because and so whenever I am home base, so I feel like I'm just sitting by my desk all the time when I'm not like playing taiko. And then sometimes I travel 1 or 2 months top, and then so I'm constantly on the go. So I'm starting to get used to that, and I used to judge myself for like waking up at 11 a.m. and then work until 1 a.m. And then but then I'm like, well, it's okay. Sometimes I get up, like I just take the morning easy off, like make food, and it's totally fine if I start working from 3 p.m. like who cares? And so I'm trying to introduce more things that it's more for self-care. Like I would like start doing yoga again. My mom is a yoga instructor and I learned a lot from her, and I'm like, why, like how come like I'm not doing more of that? And I started baking and started making food and started like sewing. Like I have to introduce new hobby in my life to actually force myself to not work, like to and rather than just sitting down and watch TV. That's my only way of like escaping from work. So I'm still learning, and I still feel like I'm not very responsible in taking care of myself sometimes. Like I'm very good at like presenting a professional image, but I'm not very good at, I'm still learning a lot just to be human, just to be a person.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to say I'm the same, Manman, like, and I think it's a continuous like journey I've been on. And I didn't realize because I was commuting for when I was in TP, I was commuting from like Irvine's like Orange County. I would commute from Orange County to downtown LA with traffic. So that was like, and I was doing that once or twice a week. And just from my work, I'm maybe like 13 miles away from downtown LA from my work, but sometimes it'll take me 2 hours. So I didn't realize like all of that just kind of added onto like the daily stress, right? So so I was doing the commute here and there for 9 years, and once I quit, I was like, oh, I have time to do laundry. Like I have, just like small things like that, which I never thought about, because it was never, not to say priority, but yeah, I guess it wasn't a priority, or I didn't think that having that downtime was important. So once I quit, I told myself, okay, I have to have like at least once a week, usually it's my Sunday, where I just kind of don't do anything except like get ready for the next coming week. So I started playing basketball again. My sister and I, she got me into the league. I started playing in first grade, and she's like, play in my league. They're all old. And I joined. I'm like, they're younger than me. They're my age. What do you mean they're old? Excuse me. But I kept up with this. So I've been 3 years of, playing basketball once a week, which really helps me. Cooking. I started cooking, and then similar to you, Mama, I had to find new hobbies because taiko was my hobby, but taiko is also life, right? So I'm like, oh, I really have to like find. I looked up all these like different like podcasts, like how to develop self-help podcasts. So I started doing different like things every day. So reading was one of them. I try to read 20 minutes, which I stopped doing, but I started picking up reading again, and I managed to like go through like all the Harry Potter books. I'm on the 7th one right now.
Wow.
Because I started with 20 minutes a day, which became I can't like stop reading. So I started reading more. I started to draw here and there. I bought myself a notepad, and
yes,
but music, I find that very therapeutic, and I just do stuff for myself because teaching, you give yourself every day, especially to little ones, right? And I feel like I'm just a broken record every day. Like, please put on your okay, please get ready. Okay, please have a calm body. Like that's just okay. So I told myself I have to commit at least like once a week, like do things for myself and just get ready for the next week. So yeah, that's my way of trying to balance my life.
That's great. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I'm 30.
Perfect.
I'm 30. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you for talking about sort of like life balance and some of the things, the ways in which you think about that in people and activities. I'm gonna move into a topic that we have been discussing at length in the fellowship program. That's sort of creativity and composition, sort of the idea of authoring Taiko expression. And actually I'm gonna ask Karen, could you talk about like one of your most recent experiences when you went to Taikopalooza? I think it was Taikopalooza, is that right?
Yes. So it's interesting because when Taikopalooza is an amazing community building event in Ulm, Germany, that happens all throughout, brings people together all throughout Europe and beyond. And it's this incredible, there's visual art, it happens in this amazing space, and it's super communal. And one of the things that we do that I've never seen done anywhere else is that, 50 people, 70 people will come together, and through watching videos and sort of a sign up system, we'll prepare for a 2-hour concert that's like free and open to the public with one run through. And you've got beginning taiko players up to folks who've been playing all their lives. And last year, Kenny and Ishizuka were there, and Yuta was there, Shoji's there. Anyway, they're whole 2-hour concert, 14 pieces, and we're running through the run-through where everybody is playing things. And while we're going through the pieces, Ishizuka and Kenny were like, "Oh, what piece is that? Who wrote that piece?" And so I'm saying, I'm going through the pieces. Oh, that's Joel's pieces. Oh, that's Raz's pieces. Oh, and then we realized that out of the 14 pieces, that 13 of them were composed by men. And I made me really think about who is writing the pieces that I am playing and that are well known. And it led to a great conversation throughout about like what systems are in place to support new compositions, and how is it that these compositions get known and widely played. And how can we, not that anything was intentional, not that anything was like, we're going to force women out of here. It's just that if we don't pay attention to the dynamics, if we don't sort of notice things, it will be because we've noticed through conversations that women will not put themselves forward as easily for a variety of reasons. And so we're really interested in composition, and particularly having it be one of the vehicles in which women can really get their voices out there. And not only compose, but develop systems from which people can know what these songs are and have access to them, so that in any given community, we have a wide range of compositions from folks.
Right, and that kind of goes into beyond, like you're saying, just the compositions, but also curation. Really thinking in sort of as we're putting together programs, as we're putting together sort of these gatherings, to really think about diversity and also sort of representation of that. Right now, gender is one of those conversations. We talked about this amongst even all of our own respective communities, and sort of things that we've been noticing. And it's been sort of a prevalent through line within sort of our leadership conversations is how to visibilize our voices, how composition is one mechanism and a very powerful one. I know for myself, it hasn't necessarily been about whether or not I'm composing or not, because I really sort of dedicated myself to having a voice. But I know that through my many years of journey that there were many hurdles along the way in order for me to be able to get my particular piece on the stage. It wasn't easy, and sometimes working with male peers and the ways in which that process came about, I know that I really had to fight my way to make sure that I was also going to be able to equally get that that piece out, or the voice, or whatever it is that I wanted to contribute. And I know that as we are being more intentional about that, or bringing this conversation forward, the idea of composition, the idea of creativity as an expression of voice is something that I'd like to talk with each one of you just a little bit about, to get your vantage points. So Manman, when you think about your compositions, because I know that you have composed, and it would be really interesting, what inspires and influences you? What are some of the things that get you going when you're composing?
Yeah, actually recently Jesse, one of the fellow, and I had a really long conversation about that. It's interesting. So even though I had lots of training in classical music composition, music theory, and all that stuff, I only really started composing in like the last couple of years. At the beginning, which is relevant to what I said earlier in about, you know, comparing yourself with lots of all these role models. Sometimes that could become a baggage for you when you like started composing, and that was the case for me for a very long time. At the very beginning, I only composed songs for my parent and child classes, because that's like a tools, very useful way to compose, and for the parents to learn. So these past couple of years, I started to actually like explore like more, and actually this coming December, at the Lati recital, 2 of my new composition will be featured on stage. So that will be actually, I think, really the first time when 2 of my more serious elaborated taiko composition being featured and learned by like 2 groups of people. So I feel like this is quite a breakthrough for me. And so like, in relevant to what Michelle you're talking about, like voices, because there are compositions who are more like mechanical, like just get the parts down and go through things and for technical purposes. But when I say like serious composition and really speaking my voice, like that's like when I feel like, okay, wow, I'm really making the steps here. So because of my like Orff Schubert music education background, which encouraged creating an inclusive space for learning and creating music, I started creating composition that allows that. Meaning that like, so there are the 2 compositions that I'm thinking about. One is Kitty Blah in the Pocket. The other one is Gliding Dreams. So both of these has a lot of moving parts that involves whoever I'm working with, and then we create our own version of it. And because I love connecting, so like the way how I deliver the composition, teaching it, it's also very interactive. We do a lot of games, body percussion, and then there is a song, there are harmonies, singing, there is movement and games and all sort of stuff that become part of the composition. Like for example, Giddy Blah in the Pocket, we all started learning all these polymeter with body percussions, and then eventually like we also have all these diagram and cards, and that became the tools for each of us who were involved to create something, and then that all together become a piece. So meaning every time when I work with someone different, it will be different. And same with Gliding Dreams too. Like I've been collaborating with many different artists, and this time my new group Mujo Creative will be performing a version of it, which is also similar, but this one it's more looking inward, and actually it's very relevant to the theme Women in Taiko too. We talk about doubts and struggles, so that piece is actually a representation of my personal struggle as a person, as my identity, and my Taiko journey. And so that piece actually allows me, not only myself now, like this time also working with other people, like, but we have that space to create something together, but also looking inward. So yeah, so it took me a long time to get over the barrier of like, because there are so many great, amazing taiko artists out there, and then I started comparing. Well, this is so different. Is this okay? Is this okay? And but now I'm at a place I have a lot of great support and response with the people that I work with. So like I'm feeling very energized and excited. So that's
Cool.
where I'm at with composition.
Thank you. Tomomi, when you're thinking about some of your favorite compositions to date, and I know you've been referencing, you know, your father's work as well. Sounds like you've been going through some archival memories. Yes, it sounds like that's quite a journey for you. But what are some strong factors of and it doesn't have to necessarily be of your father's work, but of compositions that have reached you, and how has that influenced your own creativity?
That's a good question. I feel like a lot of my dad's compositions, I feel like it's the very old school type of kumidaiko, and I feel like, you know, he embodies a lot of power and strength, and you know, back in the day when he first started LA Matsuri, I want to say the ratio of men to women was pretty equal. And then it was a collaborative effort in terms of like composing songs. So it's not all of it is his songs, but I want to say it's predominantly male who helped collaborate the songs. So I feel like when I play and listen to his songs, it's a unique feeling that I get, and I don't quite know how to describe it except for like it makes me feel strong, and it makes me feel like, I don't know any other word than strong, powerful. So, you know, I don't compose as much. However, I did compose one song for Kitsune back in 2000. When was it? 12? I can't remember. It was right a little bit before I quit. I want to say 2012, but it was inspired by, you know, the type of kumidaiko I listened to growing up. And it was really scary because, you know, we would have like group rehearsals, right? And you just have everyone's watching. And I just felt like, oh, there's like judging eyes, right? And I felt very vulnerable. But part of me is like this is who I am, and this is what I'm comfortable like showcasing. So I'm still like, I had to kind of like persuade myself to be like, this is okay. You know, it wasn't like someone was there to be like, oh, you know, like a personal cheerleader or whatever. It was more like me trying to like convince myself it was okay. So I feel like anytime I try to compose something, it is to represent strength, because my nakama group is predominantly women right now. Yeah, girls, and I have 2 boys. So, and I try to, similar to Mama, I try to cater it to, you know, the students that I have. So especially for like the younger children at El Marino. Last year I had, or the year before, I had a group of children who are not into just playing straight, like, you know, renshu. Everybody learns renshu, right? And they're like, Sensei, do we have to play renshu again? But they were really into singing. So I try to incorporate, okay, they like singing. So we ended up like singing parts of, what's it, Tankobushi. So we did Tankobushi, and we played a little bit of Matsuri. So it was kind of that balance. So there's Taiko, but I'm hearing what you need. You need something else. So that sense of balance, like listening to what the student wants, but also showcasing that side of like kumidaiko. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Vicky, what motivates you to be creative?
I think in the past, what like looking at the pieces that I have written, what motivated me before was kind of just, I thought of like I had like an image or like this kind of like a cool idea or something. I was like, oh, I want to just try and see what happens. And luckily, like in college, like that is kind of I think a space where like people can really be creative and just try and write pieces and do whatever. So it was great to like start Taiko with that freedom to do that. Right now, I think what inspires me is there's the struggle to find your voice. Like I had this like little, like, not epiphany, what's the word, just like a moment of making a connection 2 months ago, because I talked to someone about how there's no right way to express yourself, or to express if it's coming from something deep and something that you know. And I was like, wow, that's amazing, and like I totally get it. But then like I feel like I made another step very recently in realizing that I kind of skipped over the step of you have to find yourself first, and find your voice. And that is the hard part. That is the struggle of being an artist, is you question who you are, and you question what you're doing, and you look at what you've done and see where you want to grow, and where you can where you're not satisfied with yourself, or where you feel like there's like cycles also of like questioning and destruction, and breaking yourself down and building it back up. And that is the really hard part of being an artist. And but the struggle in itself also is really that is inspiring too. Like, you're not, as an artist, it's not like you're struggling to get there and suddenly you're an artist and you're like making things and you get it. It's that right? It's really not. I think that there's the romanticized idea of what an artist is, and the perseverance and resilience and that struggle that is moving. And I think that that can drive some really deep creativity and
Life.
Yeah.
Okay, but you were also talking about, I mean, some of those places, those hurdles, the challenges. I mean, that's all part of creativity as well. I'm gonna ask this to all of you, and also ask the webinar folks too. When you do get stuck, and that is a reality, when you get stuck in your creative process, or when you're trying to be creative, what do you do? So when you get stuck, what do you do? I would love to hear in the chat section. If people could start typing, we will sort of pop up, announce, and so forth, because this is where it can get really defeating. We just did a weekend performance, and the word "to be defeated." The work defeats you sometimes. It's very true. And when you get to that place, and Vicky was talking about the word resilience, so to come back from these challenges, or perseverance, right? When you're facing something, there's something that you might switch into to help you. So love to hear what do you all do, because we all need some encouragement, some cheering on, maybe some prompts. So thoughts on the chat line, please. I'm waiting.
I have to say, just when it comes to just being stuck in general, I don't know if I heard this from someone, but I'll stop and we'll walk in a circle. And then we will walk in a circle the other way. So something about resetting physically or something. that I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
I usually go eat. That's why my kitchen's right here by my desk.
I just have to completely walk away from it. You know, like it's like, okay, that's a good idea. Oh, I should, and it just, my mind like spirals, right? I'm like, okay, I just need to like step away from it. And I feel like I do my best thinking when I'm not thinking about like what I really, if that makes sense, when you're driving, right? Your mind is going, right? Or for me, driving helps me think of stuff. Taking when I'm in the shower. I feel like that's like I do a lot of my thinking there too. So I've stepped away from like what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm also thinking about it, but not to an extent where I'm stressing myself. I'm like, oh, I could try that. Oh, da, 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 da. So I think just like being away from the environment where I'm like, oh, this is like really like frustrating me. And just even taking the next stage is to, you know, not think about it, and then it kind of sets your, I feel like it really like resets your mind, and you get a different perspective. So I gotta step away from it.
Cool. On the chat line, Evelyn says, agree, take a break. Brains keep working overnight, so I often find it's easier to start again the next day. Lisa says, I'm with Tomomi. Step away, stop thinking about it, come to it another time. Derek, assess and decide to keep pushing on or forgive myself to move on.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Drop it.
Yeah,
Just
adding to that, because like for those who actually have a deadline sometimes, you know, like you're required to be creative by a certain time to put that out there. And I think what Derek said about forgiving, it's very important, like, because like it's okay, like you might be constantly judging yourself, like you're stuck here, like, so just let it go, let it be, knowing that it's not perfect, it is what it is, and that's the beauty of it, and then like move on, and yeah, that is that is the most challenging part, because you will constantly be like recreating what you've created. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I said all my pieces are structural improv in some way. So so I allowed them to be different every time. And then I would just stop judging myself, like, okay, that's it. And let's do something else. Yeah. And that's the mentality. It's hard.
We have some more thoughts coming in. Jen says, I like to ask some of my Taiko colleagues to poke holes or be my devil's advocate, per se. I enjoy the struggle of resolution. Margaret says, finding a sympathetic pair of ears. Props to my partner to hash out problems. The process of explaining the problem often yields answers.
Yes.
Liz says, self-compassion is sometimes difficult for women. Be kind to yourself.
Yes.
Dulce says, some days nothing works. Oh, lots are coming in. Some days nothing works, so I take a break, take a nap, relax.
Sleep again, rest your brain.
Yeah.
Ian says, I often get stuck on small details or logistics. I'm trying recently to just make a decision and move to the next thing and come back to it later if possible. Also, high five, fellow shower composer. I have that conversation in my life. Okay, so anyway, Marty, do something physical. For me, lots of thoughts or creative ideas happen when I'm hiking.
Breathe, oxygen, movement. That's awesome.
Yes, Eileen. Yes. OMG. All the answers are in the shower.
Sorry, what did I do?
Sarah says, recreating what you've already created resonates a lot with me. I have no solutions, just empathy. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, more. Izumi says, eat, sleep, take a walk, meditate. So kind of resetting for sure. Forgiveness. Also know you're not alone. in this process, that it's a very real part of it. I think for myself, when I accepted that this is actually the most exciting part of composition, it can be the most frustrating part of composition, but it's the exciting part because it's about to burst, something is going to happen, because of the conflict, that something brilliant is about to come. So when I think about that, I can get more excited about the challenge and getting stuck than I can about getting frustrated with myself. So that's one thing as I've journeyed through, and I'm like, oh, here I am again. That's okay. It's okay. But I definitely, for me, I do a lot of journaling personally. So I'll go back into my journal and I'll just start writing. And just as I write down stuff and I just go free form, things just start to open up. So, ways to open yourself up, forgive yourself. Cool. Well, let's move on to the next section.
Great.
Thank you everyone for contributing to getting stuck. Hopefully that gives a little bit of compassion and maybe some nice tips for you all. So what should we talk about next, Karen?
So we've talked a bit about this. I just have to say a big shout out. I didn't know about this shower. I think I'm gonna have to do some work in the shower. And I'm really loving the audience participation. So thanks for all of you who are chatting in the chat box. Yep. This next section is about your Taiko work. And I'm also conscious that we want to think about time and make sure that there's enough time for some questions that we just haven't asked, or topics that we haven't touched upon. So those of you in the audience that may have some specific questions, we'd love to hear them. So these
and actually, can I interrupt with that too?
Yes.
Because we are going to transition there, go ahead and start filling the chat with questions, and we'll be looking through that even now, because we don't need to wait for that, because we're going to transition to that. So you're welcome to, if you have any questions, go ahead and start putting it in the chat line at this point.
Okay. So Vicky, Manman, this is about your Taiko work, and you've talked a bunch about being an artist already, both of you. But and if we could be succinct in these answers, like who do you see as your primary audiences for your work, and who do you want to reach with your work? I think in this section, I think it would be nice to hear from everyone briefly, just because we all have different stories. For instance, for me, Vicky, much for me the same. I didn't really start calling myself an artist until 2 years ago. I think I was like Tomomi. I just called myself a Taiko player. I'm a Taiko player. And then I started to really look at my community building work and my social justice work, and I applied for grants for artists to do what was called social practice art, or socially engaged art, or cultural organizing. And I didn't know what any of that meant, 'cause I was just a Taiko player. But there's a whole section of the arts field that is about how you use your art to engage or build community or make change happen. And so now I talk about myself as a social practice artist or a cultural organizer. And my primary audiences are folks in the community that either have marginalized experiences or identities, and we don't hear their stories very much. So I'm currently working with Black elders, in one of Boston's most resilient neighborhoods, to really figure out how to use Taiko to really empower and bolster their voice. And so that's kind of who my audience is. I've also applied for grants to work with people who have facing issues around chronic housing insecurity, veterans, etc. And so those are the folks I'm really interested in working with, not necessarily to build a sort of elite performance group, but to really look at how the art can actually be a process for people to heal and be big in their lives. So Manman, why don't we go to you, and then Vicky, and then Tomomi.
Okay. So my work, let's see. So I would say when I think about my Taiko work, I think of the space when I create with people. So it could be in the classroom workshop space, in the conference workshop space, or even on stage. And I guess my audience is pretty broad, because like even when I think of like my Taiko Together classroom, like the activities are set up in a way that we could create. And of course, sometimes I'm sure other teachers would feel the same too. Like when you teach really young children, you're basically performing the entire time. So that's like many different aspects of like work that goes into that too, like the philosophy behind how I create the repertoire and how I execute it, and how now I even have a team of people that I work with, how I make sure that we are on the same page, that share the same core values and mission, and to be able to get to the same place together. And then when I think about, because I travel a lot to work with different groups, different countries, different cities, and different conferences. So meaning that some of these work, I only get exposed to this group of people for a very short time. And so how can I get the most connection within the very limited amount of time? Mm-hmm. But luckily my tools as the educator, and my goals of like creating that inclusive learning space allows me to do that. And I care a lot about like because like what really I'm drawn to is like the sense of inclusiveness. It's like we create. I think one time someone pointed out like how my work compared to Karen's work, like we both like create a lot of connection. So Karen is really great like facilitating discussion and connection through that way. And then so this person, actually it's Amy Naylor, said that the way I create connection in my workshop space is through music making and so, which is really interesting. Yeah. And I actually I'm doing that with my recent composition, which is more like complicated in terms of technical execution with Taiko. But I'm able to keep maintaining the same sense of like connection and find your voice. So I guess I don't know if that answer, yeah, because I don't really just think of one group or particular audience. It's just whoever that comes into my life. Like I'm gonna Taiko you.
I'm gonna Taiko.
Yeah, like
it's now become a verb. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Mama, that's great. I think just because of time, unfortunately, we're going to move on. And I'd love to hear all of your answers, but we've got some other things we really want to touch upon. So thanks for that, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you. We want to come back to women in Taiko, and really think about sort of that sort of large perspective and why these webinars and were important for us to host. And I guess I'm gonna give each one of you 1 minute. Do the profound 1 minute, please. But and thank you. We already started to get one question from all of you. We want to make sure that we don't lose time or run out of time for questions. So thank you, Evelyn. We will ask your question soon. And if there's anyone else with a question, you're welcome to put it in the chat. So in 1 minute, when you think about women in Taiko, in our Taiko community, what do you think the future is for women in Taiko? What do you think our future is? Currently, as we've looked at some statistics and so forth, that definitely the participation of women in many Taiko groups are predominantly, that's I think at this point I've heard 70%, right? But then when we look at professional players, performers, or teachers, like the workshop leaders and so forth, that somehow that percentage is not 70% women are teaching workshop leading workshops at, for instance, North American Taiko Conference. So that same place of participation and then leadership actually are sort of two different sorts of things. So what do you hope maybe the future for women in Taiko is, and what are your thoughts about that, as well, as we've now been facing some of these ways in which there is some disparities of gender representation in our community. So we get 1 minute. I'm giving you I'm vamping so you can think, because it's hard, I know, and I'm sorry to put that time pressure, but we want to be mindful of time. Who's ready to go? Who's ready?
I feel like because we have this woman in Taiko, and Taiko is still new here in America, right? But I am happy that we have become more aware of this disparity between men and women, and I don't think it happened like intentionally. I think it is a cultural thing too, because in Japanese culture, it's like the male plays the dominant role, right? So luckily we live here in the US where there's so much diversity and that sense of like being conscious of one another. I just hope that more women feel comfortable and like comfortable putting themselves out there. Currently I'm working on a side project with Derek and Yuta and Blaine, and we want to make sure that men and women are equally like represented. So just having that awareness, I think, is number one, right? Just not looking away. I think having that sense of awareness is number one. And for us women, feeling like it's okay, like we do have something to offer, because it is that number one question, like, what do we have to offer? Like, I don't know what I can, like, I just want it to get to a point where it's like, yeah, I think I can offer something. Let me, feeling like confident, or I feel like confident is not the right word. Feeling safe to put yourself out there, because I'm still scared to put I'm scared right now, to putting myself out there. But I just hope, because we have such, women in Taiko, and just being more conscious and aware of all that, hopefully it creates positive changes for the women in the Taiko community.
Cool.
That was over a minute, I'm sorry.
No, that was 2 minutes. That was great. 2 minutes. So give 2 minutes to everyone. Yes, Manman, go.
So so this whole women in Taiko movement, I started to talk faster. Started exactly at the time when I decided to move here, like to California. So I've been super grateful with this networking connection, and that has brought me a lot of work and support, and also emotional support too, like to feel more confidence. And I remember couple of times that when I felt so defeated, I'm like, Karen, I need to talk to you. Or I was just like looking forward to go to Step Up, Step Out, like in August. And because that space, like just being in a space to have all these conversations together, really helped to reinforce, just to check in with yourself, like ideologies and all the things that sometimes you just stop thinking about. You don't even realize that you're doing it to yourself. So I think this movement, it's really exciting. Like, I want to see more of that influence, and more people would feel positive and powerful, and just can reach out to each other and support each other to create more. Yeah.
Collaborations.
Yeah, collaborations,
Yay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice. Vicky.
So for women, I think women have very different strength from men and a very different flavor, right? And like I think it can be easy like with Taiko to feel like Taiko community is separate from what's happening in the rest of the world. Like, oh, the Taiko community is so wonderful and like we have no problems. Like I think, yeah, that has been the fight, and like finally the awareness is here that it's not perfect at all, and like to go forward with that awareness. And then yeah, sorry. So and like women, like I'm thinking about like the types of works that like Karen and Manman and have talked about, that you work so collaboratively, and like within a group you focus on creating those connections. And that's something that I don't think that like a lot of the, well, I don't want to generalize, but I don't see that so much in a lot of like male professional performers. It's different, right? Coming in with creating those connections with people first, and then building something with that. And that's something that's such a beautiful strength. And like the world needs that right now. We all need that right now. And the fact that, yeah, like Maman said, like to recognize that with other women too, and then to be here to support each other in finding our own strength and bringing that forward and finding the confidence. And we're all scared together, and it's all, we're all fighting, but we're also here for each other. And I think, yeah, there's the world needs more women to be out there. I think it can happen and is happening. And yeah.
Thank you. So with that, I just want to go into some questions. Thank you. We have two very provocative questions that have been put into the chat. We will try our best to answer as many as we possibly can, but know that we are being mindful of time. So thank you so much. But know that these questions, even being put out here on the chat, is just a prompt and an opportunity for even more conversation. So thank you for the two people. I'm going to start with Evelyn, since you put yours out there. What advice do you have on how to move forward when someone you trust, usually male, gives you unsolicited, judgmental feedback?
Call a friend. Immediately.
You said call a friend? Karen,
immediately. That's what I said. Well, I'm just thinking about folks that have come to me that, like, I think, there's a lot in one, like, how do we take feedback like that in general? Like, whether it comes from whoever, like we all receive feedback in different ways. And that in itself can be a whole thing to process. But the other thing is, there's a lot to really thinking about, like, what is good, what is not good, what is Taiko, what is not Taiko. And I think in some ways, and I've had long conversations with lots of people about this, like, if we really only present Taiko to be like this little box, we miss like all the Taiko that's out here and what Taiko could be. And we really have to think about, like, that feedback's coming from one perspective, and there's a lot else that's outside the box. So that's what immediately comes to mind about how I interpret and engage and sort of let that feedback land. That doesn't have anything to do with, like, how I handle it with that person. And maybe somebody wants to say how you actually handle it with that person. What I'm addressing is how you internalize and what you do with that information.
Great.
Ooh, this is a hard one.
Go ahead, Jesus. And when I have thoughts, I definitely have some thoughts.
Because I feel like I've been there too. It's like,
absolutely.
I give them that face, like, okay. So I feel like for me, I have to really take a step back, and I have to find, like, the strength to not take it personally, but so hard not to do that, right? So obviously talking with friends, I feel like Mama and I have really good conversations about, you know, things like this. And for me, if it really, really bothers me, I would probably confront that person, but come from a place where I'm not trying to like, I'm trying to find a solution as to like, how do I explain this? Like, I'm not trying to pick a fight, you know, I'm just trying to express myself in the most like chanto, like organized way. But that also takes like courage too, and it's scary. But yeah, I think going to friends would be my first one, and really not taking a step back from it. Yeah, because it doesn't feel good at all. Yeah,
It's
really,
also a typical pattern. There's a lot of people who are going to be out there telling you what they think of you. There's a lot of people out there who specifically male, but not just male. Their race also plays out in the life that I have also lived, where they like to tell me what they think I should be or what I should be doing. How do you prepare yourself for that? But then also, powers of questions is what I'm going to say. I usually ask a question back. And I think being vigilant about this, I think there's just too many people in this world that likes to think that they're helpful by giving you their thoughts, and knowing that it's not your responsibility to absorb it, nor to necessarily have to do what they're saying. So be ready and prepared, and also what I would just also say that come back to them with a question if you can, because as much as I do agree, like I unpack a lot of things afterwards, and I call my friends, or I talk to my partner quite a bit about these things. But if we can't shift these patterns of behaviors even on the spot, then it's just going to keep replicating itself over and over and over again. We're going to continue to roll our eyes inwardly, and we're going to go into our private spaces to deal with it. So I just empower everyone to think about how could you be prepared to continuously respond to unsolicited advice. I am going to move on to the next one, because there was a second to this next question asked by Margaret. And I would love to hear everyone's thoughts here. How do we empower women to lead in Taiko without repeating same old, typically male patterns of leadership?
it's a really good question.
yeah.
So that also goes with, how do we not continue to encourage these same patterns, you know, and start disrupting it and modeling it? So how do we think about that? What are your thoughts?
I definitely think a lot about that, and also trying to practice that in, like, as I'm starting to be in the leadership position, like when I started like to have other Taiko Together teachers, and then now starting a group, and then comparing my past experience too, like, because sometimes when we draw experience, we look out there, but majority of the groups are have been like run under like a more patriarchal type of leadership structure. And I really value communication tools. And like, for example, actually Karen, I had a lot of conversation with you about how do we set up a space for open conversation. And then like, and Evelyn, actually, she's in my group, like she offers a lot of like support in that sense too. And then like there are a lot of people out there that I've been lucky that to have those people that I work with. When we start a group, when we have a space, we would start proactively thinking what could potentially happen. And then you start like, how can you create that space for feedback, for communication, for an open communication? And those are really difficult and challenging. And for many leaders, sometimes they don't necessarily put in the work to do that. But I think that's one thing I appreciate about Women in Taiko is creating those space to educate ourselves about what does open communication means. I think that's one of the really important ways in changing that. If that's answering the question. Yeah.
Yeah, growing up, it was always like the sensei, right? And I remember, like, I don't mean to throw my dad in the bus, but like with the younger kids, he always say like, "Oh, they can't do it. They can't do it." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you didn't let them try, you know? So from that point on, I think I was like 18, maybe 17 or 18. I told myself, I don't want to be that. You know, I want to make sure that I believe, not to say he didn't believe in the students, but I very much value like their feelings and all of that, kind of seeing them as a whole person versus like they're just a student, you know? So I really try to see the members of Nakama and like Marino as like members, as opposed to like they're just another body in class, and really try to get their input, and we all collaborate, especially for the older ones, like we collaborate a lot. So yes, I lead it, but I also give them the opportunity to like share ideas and try it out. If I go, did that sound okay? I'm like, well, maybe try it this way. You know, it's kind of like this give and take. So I'm very much aware of like their self-esteem and their feelings, because growing up I was scared. Like, I don't want to mess up or else I'll get in trouble. So I don't want to set that environment up. So I kind of put myself in the student or the students or the members' shoes, as opposed to just like thinking it from my perspective.
Yeah, I think, yeah, what you're saying about like treating each person as a whole person, not as just a body. And like yeah, exactly. Maman's thoughts about communication, like it is conversation and having the patience to talk through things, try things. But yeah, just like getting the people that you're with to want to be invested in the conversations and slow down and take the time and do that deep work and deep thought as a group. That's, yeah, people don't want to take time right now, or a lot of the time, and are too impatient. And yeah, it's not easy. Things will fail, but sometimes things will work really well too. And yeah, it's just giving the space for that, I think, is important.
I have just couple brief things to add. One is, I think we have to model different styles. So Michelle and I led the last Step Up, Step Out Women in Taiko Professional Development Retreat, and we did it collaboratively, and our facilitation was very transparent. And I remember one of the comments in the end, because Michelle and I very much agreed from the beginning, we're very responsive leaders and facilitators. So if we see a conversation directing that way, we rethink the agenda, we, sort of allocate time differently, we sort of feel where the group is, and we move. And I remember one comment at the end, one of the participants saying, I've never seen anyone lead this way. There's agenda, 10 minutes this, 15 minutes that, 10 minutes this, like the fact that you could think out loud, think freshly, work with a partner, have conversations in front of the group was something new and different. And I think we have to model that. The other thing is, wherever we feel like what I'm doing is not the right way or is not the Taiko way, it has to be questioned. So, in Europe, when we were talking about like women composing, I remember I asked different leaders, women leaders, like, what would it take for you to compose something to offer to the European community so everybody could learn your pieces? And one person said, well, my taiko is really different. You know, I don't know if anyone would want to play it. It's got movement and things to it. I'm like, that's exactly why we need it. You know, we need our taiko ecosystem to be really diverse and broad and interesting and deep. And so, like, any place you're challenged or where you think that it doesn't fit is exactly why we need to have it there. And so not be afraid to, when it doesn't fit your teaching style, your perspective, your philosophy, your taiko, the way you play taiko, who you play taiko for, all of that has to be thought of as fitting. We're part of an ecosystem. It's all needed. Not just hard, fast taiko, not just happy taiko that's, you know, all kinds of taiko, on stage, off the stage, etc.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, I want to add one more too, because I had some conversations with some taiko artists, and they're all mostly male taiko artists, and they believe in such a like elitism approach of looking at taiko. So like what I hope is actually the taiko community will have more different taiko players step up and step out and show, like Karen said, to have different role models, different samples. And like, because it's really hard to break that ideology. Sometimes a lot of us kind of get sucked into that and start thinking, what is the best taiko? Who is the best taiko player? Like, who is the best something? But why do we have to think about is at best? Why can't we just look at it as a, like Karen said, a much bigger box? I think that would be one way to empower more women to lead in taiko without repeating some old typically male patterns of leadership. I'm repeating that question out there because like we have to think out of the box.
And credit Michelle Fujii for Taiko ecosystem. That was her phrase.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, I one of the things that Karen was just also talking about is recently, you know, like when we get into these models, little statements like that continue to be said, like, oh, this is not the way that I'm used to doing it. But really making sure at that moment in time you don't cater, then how do you do it? Just go, well, then it's different. That's exactly where you need to have the strength to keep maintaining your viewpoint. But I also think of empowerment beyond just taiko. And when thinking about this, I really have done a very large paradigm in awareness for my life. Think about trying to do this beyond just taiko. Who are the people that you support, the movies you watch, the shows that you go to, the food that you eat. I really have been shifting even my everyday life to look at where is it that I'm spending my time on. And so I've been really trying to spend a lot of time advocating people to go to shows with women artists, to eat food with women chefs or POC chefs, because sometimes there's a glorified white male chef paradigm as well. And so like and you know, I do some, you know, sometimes I go to those places, but I'm conscious of these choices. But the paradigms, the menus, all of these are all different structures that we go to and we start building ourselves on. And even in those sorts of places, we continue to reinforce and build empowerment of different paradigms if we actually even look at everyday places. So don't just think of it within taiko. Think about it also in other ways that you can find some, specifically right now we're talking about women leadership models, and that's how I empower myself, and not just talk about women in taiko, but women throughout. Also, for me, race plays a lot in my work, and I think a lot of POC or, you know, cultural communities, and how they can really have and represent their voices too, because there are some challenges with the silencing of those communities' voices as well. So find those other paradigms, because on a daily place you might find your advocates, your allies, and loneliness is one of the most dangerous places to be living in. And knowing that what Women in Taiko has been trying to do is that we are not alone, and we're all struggling, but we're all going for, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep expressing and hopefully empowering each other. So how do we empower? Hopefully this webinar was one way to do that. And as we close out in our last couple minutes, I know we have an activity, and then maybe we will make sure to, I'll do a wrap up right at the very end. So Karen, why don't we do our activity?
Yeah, so our activity, again, we come to our audience, and Margaret has already started. We want to know from you, what's a short highlight or a short insight or a statement that you want to say based on sort of our time tonight. So Margaret says, thank you, Karen, Michelle, Manman, Vicky, and Tomomi for sharing your experiences, thoughts, and answers so openly and powerfully. So of course we love appreciations, but anything else you want to say about, like, a particular highlight or something that this has made you think about differently, or maybe a next step for you is also really fun to hear. So we'll give a minute for people to type in what they want to say. And I just want to say also, if you want to send any follow-up notes to me or the panelists in your registration, you had an email. It was really nice to hear from some of you from after the last webinar, just any thoughts that you had or how it impacted you. It does help us know we're headed in the right direction, but also feedback for us for the next webinar, which Michelle will talk about in a minute, would be great. So in your chat box, anything you would like to say, highlight, takeaway, next step. And as we're waiting for them, maybe Manman, Vicky, and Tomomi, if you would like to say any kind of closing, something short.
Thank you. Like I always, thank you. I always appreciate time to speaking with all of you, which I had like individually and as a group too. So it's always very powerful, valuable to have time like this.
Great, here they come. Jen from Nevada. This is a great reminder that this is great space for support, for looking at if we have some struggles, we have a place to go for getting the strength needed while we are feeling vulnerable. Lisa from DC, I found it reassuring to have reinforced that creativity comes from all forms and that there is no one way to express yourself. Yes. Jen, thank you for continuing to give this collective voice, keep this collective voice going. Izumi, solidarity beyond Taiko community, not just women in Taiko, but beyond our community, how to support ourselves and others to make the equitable society. That last comments by Michelle pretty much solidify what I'd like to do with Taiko and beyond. Yes, thank you, thank you. Good. Evelyn, thank you so much for creating this space and being so open and honest. I got a lot of good ideas to add to my MC introduction to Manman's, how do you say that again?
Giddy blah.
Giddy Blahs at our Latte recital coming up. Subtle subversion.
Ooh, subversion.
Subtle subversion. And just one quick announcement, I forgot to say that if you want to support Women in Taiko, this webinar does cost us a little bit of money, and we give our panelists a little bit of a stipend to say thank you for their time. You can go to the womenintaiko.org website and make a contribution there. Marty says, thank you all for sharing your precious time with us and for creating this forum. I enjoyed your discussions on balance. Great reminders. Very good.
And while maybe this last minute is happening, let me also talk about our third webinar, our final part of the series. If you haven't been able to check out yet, we had our first webinar with PJ Hirabashi and Tiffany Tamaribuchi 2 weeks ago, and that is actually available on the Women in Taiko website, which was labeled Wisdom. But it was really about like sort of like the trajectory of being in this art form and being a taiko artist for many years, decades. And then this, of course, is the second part, which was Emergence. So thank you all for being here. Also, it will be available online, so you're welcome to find this and let somebody else know about this conversation, encourage them to hear it. Our final one is going to be in December, Tuesday, December 17th, 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. And we are going to feature our 4 fellows talking about their journey of the 7-month program. And this is going to be sort of the completion of these 7 months, their stretch projects and everything that they discovered. So please, please, please come and hear about some of their explorations and their discoveries, because that is, you know, such an important thing to sort of hear people in process. And so we've got some final comments here. Do you want to read them, Karen?
Sure. Dulce says, thank you so much for the support and sharing your thoughts and experiences. It makes our journey valuable too. Heart. That's very nice. Lisa, who was a fellow and will present next month. Eileen Ho, thanks to all you here, as you're all part of the journey. Yeah, awesome. We are. We're part of the journey together.
So please mark December 17th. We hope many of you can join us. It's been really fabulous. Thank you to our panelists, Manman, Vicky.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. It's always wonderful. We're working together.
Yes, it's wonderful with you, Michelle. Look forward to the next one.
Until the next one.
Until the next one. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.